Alright, I am back with another build, and today we are doing a build for the Dark Urge. If you were around this past weekend, you will know that I did a live stream on Saturday, basically getting an Act 3 save file ready with Dark Urge unlocked, as well as a few other things, in order to, well, have a Dark Urge save file ready in order to make Dark Urge builds. Specifically, I really wanted to make this specific build today, but obviously this will open me up for more Dark Urge builds in the future, so if you want to see them, let me know. But today I have a very interesting build. I wanted to do another build with Fiend Warlock, because I haven't done one in quite a while, and as you know I really love kind of making Pyromancer type builds, and I really wanted to try a different take on it. And then it got me thinking about how I also wanted to do a build using the Dark Urge, and I will say spoilers for the Dark Urge storyline here, but at this point the game has been out for a while across all platforms, so I am going to be talking about spoilers fairly freely in this video, namely around one specific mechanic related to the Dark Urge, so less spoilery stuff for the late story, but kind of maybe just a bit of stuff in Act 2. So if that bothers you, click off the video now, but otherwise let's get into it. So the thing I wanted to do with this build is I wanted to make a build based around the Fiend, Warlock, and the Slayer. And I wanted to take this opportunity to show some aspects of Warlock that I really haven't managed to do yet. And the way the overall build turned out had more synergy than I thought. Like, there's more synergy between Slayer and Warlock, specifically Fiend, than I initially realized, and I think it actually turned into a super interesting and fun Dark Urge build, because there was something I wanted to capture with this build. This build is mainly focused on roleplay, because there's a part of the Dark Urge kind of storyline that irks me. Don't get me wrong, I love Dark Urge, and it's my favourite way to play the game personally, good or evil, but it does have an issue. And that is the fact that the Dark Urge is lacking in saving throws. And what I mean is that outside of the character you kill right at the very beginning, Alfira, or her replacement, if you know what you're doing, well, that's the only Dark Urge thing that actually happens out of your control. Whereas everything else that happens after that, you basically just have the ability to freely say no to. And that got me thinking, what if we played a Dark Urge character who genuinely wants to do good, but can't do so all the time? Specifically when Sceleritas fell, the Dark Urge's butler turns up, he finds himself unable to resist his urge, and as such, does some dark things, and then obviously comes to regret them, and vows to kind of use the power that Baal has bestowed upon them in order to do good, despite the evil acts that they have committed out of their control. So it's a real kind of tragic character, someone who just can't help but commit acts of evil when in actuality they're trying to do good. So this is a good playthrough, but there will be some portions throughout the game, like for example, a method to unlock the Slayer form that you genuinely can't help but do. And I think that creates an interesting character dynamic. And again, I really think the Dark Urge should have had these things actually be saving throws that you had to pass, because at the end of the day people can still reload and do whatever with them, but for people who want to roleplay, it just adds that a bit more of a dynamic flavour to the Dark Urge playthrough. That's my thing personally, but enough ranting, let's actually get into the build. So, we're going to be kicking things off, surprise surprise, as a Warlock. The reason I want to go pretty much all the way with Warlock in this, and in fact I'll just say it now, this is a single class build, we're just taking Warlock levels, is because I wanted to get a bunch of things from Fiend Warlock and the base Warlock class itself, and while a lot of people find Warlock somewhat limiting because it's not really a full martial class, it's not really a full spellcasting class, it's kind of somewhere in the middle, and it makes people feel a bit awkward, I wanted to kind of use external sources as well to augment this build, so equipment and even the illithid powers, which I'll get into a little bit later. But mainly we're going to be focusing on what the Warlock can do for us in conjunction with the Dark Urge's Slayer form, and you'll see it works out pretty nicely. As for our cantrips, I don't want Eldritch Blast. This is not an Eldritch Blast build, and I'm actually going to go out of my way to not take it, because there's something else I want to grab later. So, pick whatever you like as your starting cantrips. I'm personally just going to be picking up Friends and Mage Hand, because they're both seriously great for their utility, and I'm going to be leaving the other damaging cantrips behind. Obviously, as I've already said, our subclass is the Fiend. The Fiend is going to add Hellish Rebuke and Burning Hands to our spell list, both of which are Pyromancy spells, so I'm going to want them both. We also gain Dark One's Blessing, allowing us to, whenever we reduce a hostile creature to 0 hit points, it grants us 5 temporary hit points, or hit points equal to our Charisma modifier, so pretty damn nice. As for our spells, we're going to be taking our 2 Fiend spells here, because again, I want to do Pyromancy. And finally, the stats. Now, I have Charisma set to 17 because I have used Ethel's Boon with this build. Don't get me wrong, this is a character that wants to do good, but I definitely think they would be willing to take a deal with a hag to kind of end a conflict without too much bloodshed, and possibly gain a little bit of a boon to help them perhaps fight their dark urge in the future. Because for those of you that don't know, charisma isn't just like how sexy you are, it's actually your ability to enforce your own will on the rest of the world. So I think any chance this guy would take to kind of like boost his charisma, he absolutely would. So I think Ethel's Boon for charisma perfectly makes sense for this build, and it would be the optimal way to do it. However, if you wanted to use certain pieces of equipment that I'll be showcasing later on, you don't actually need it. You can still make this build work pretty well without that stuff. So overall, it's entirely up to you, but I would suggest Ethel's Boon to kind of optimize the stat spread. So we've got a 17 in Charisma because of that. Now, you have a choice you want to make if you want more AC or more Constitution. 16, 14 for Dexterity and Constitution respectively is my personal choice. I find that the amount of health we get at 14 is satisfactory for this build, especially when we get the added amount of HP from the Slayer form as well, and Dexterity is going to help us round out with a nice little bit of AC by the time this build is done. And Wisdom is our kind of like extra point stat where I've got the 10s, and Intelligence and Strength are at 8. As for our skill proficiencies, we are a Dark Urge, which means we are going to have Intimidation and Medicine by default. Intimidation is already great, Medicine is kinda meh, but it can allow us to use the Alchemy system, I guess, slightly more effectively, as well as we get to pick up a few proficiencies from Warlock. I'm ignoring Deception for now for reasons that will probably be obvious to most, but I'll get into later. So we have Arcana and Investigation for our current proficiencies. Next up, at Warlock level 2, we're starting to get really into the Warlock stuff, getting our extra spell slot, as well as the Invocations and an extra spell. We'll take Hex for now, as we don't really have a proper concentration option, so this would just be a nice way to get some extra damage, as well as being able to pick up 2 Eldritch Invocations. Now, as I said, since we're not taking Eldritch Blast, we're not going to be getting Agonizing or Repelling Blast, so I'm going to recommend picking up 2 nice kind of roleplay options here, Beast Speech and Beguiling Influence. Beast Speech allows us to cast Speak with animals, as well as Beguiling Influence giving us proficiency in Deception and Persuasion. This is why we didn't take Deception earlier. So we're basically getting a ton of useful roleplay options right off the bat, which makes this character feel quite like a protagonist, because you are the face of the party with your high charisma, and you have the ability to speak to anyone, because we have Intimidation, Persuasion, and Deception, as well as the ability to speak with animals. Next up, at Warlock level 3, we get to pick our Pact Boon, and this is so obvious. We're going with Pact of the Blade. Pact of the Tome would work fine for this build if you wanted to, and Pact of the Chain is fine if you want to play my very old Hellfire Pyromancer video, but Pact of the Blade is what we're going for here. We are going for that Martial Caster mix, giving us Bind Pact Weapon, allowing us to become proficient with any weapon we decide to bind with, as well as allowing it to use our Charisma instead of our Strength or Dexterity for the attack and damage rolls. We also gain the ability to summon packed weapons as well, including but not limited to, I believe, a greatsword, a spear, a trident, an two-handed axe, and a rapier, I think. I think that's all of them. But anyways, let's get into the level 2 spells, and of course we're going to be picking up Scorching Ray. Scorching Ray is going to allow us to hurl rays of fire, so yeah, another big pyromancy spell, which is great for us. And because I've chosen Zariel Tiefling as our starting race, and you can play as any race, it really doesn't matter. In fact, Human might be preferable because it would give you medium armor proficiency, or something along those lines, but I went with because we get things like Searing Smite and Thaumaturgy. I thought the Zariel Tiefling could be fun, and again it kind of goes with that whole Hellfire theme, but again you can play as a human if you so desire. Next up, at Warlock level 4, we get to choose our first feat. Now since we already have our Charisma at 18 with Ethel's Boon at this point, I want to get into our main feat for this build, the one that I would definitely recommend taking, whereas the other ones are kind of optional. I want Spell Sniper. Spell Sniper is going to allow us to learn a cantrip of our choice, and the number we need to roll the number we need to roll to get a critical hit with spells is reduced by 1. So with spells, we roll a crit on a 19 or higher. And we get to pick a cantrip, and of course I want Firebolt. Firebolt is going to allow us to hurl a mote of fire, dealing 1d10 damage, and at the end of our leveling, it will do 3d10 damage, as well as being able to trigger a few features for us as well. This is perfect. This is a perfect way to get our kind of fire cantrip for this build. This is basically going to be replacing Eldritch Blast for us. And while this is obviously a downgrade to Eldritch Blast, if you're just building a standard Warlock, there are ways to boost it up to Eldritch Blast status with some equipment as well. And because we are using Spell Sniper, it'll use our Charisma. This is perfect for us. As you can see, cantrips use our Charisma. So this is actually a really interesting way to get some cantrips, like for example Thorn Whip, that uses your Charisma, which I think is kind of cool. Speaking of cantrips, we do get to pick another one, and I guess I'll grab Minor Illusion. And then next up we do get to pick another spell, and I would personally be grabbing either Hold Person or Darkness at this point. We can pick up Devil's Sight so that we can use the Darkness Devil's Sight combo if we so desire, and Hold Person is going to be really, really good on a build like this, so we're going to want to pick up both eventually anyway, so just pick your favourite now. Next up at Warlock level 5, we are going to get to access to level 3 spells, and of course we're grabbing Fireball. I mean, it makes sense, it is the iconic fire spell, dealing a fuck ton of fire damage and just being a big fuck-off explosion that just blows everything up because it's Fireball, goddammit. And next up we do get to pick up another Eldritch Invocation, and of course we'll grab Devil's Sight. Even if we're not directly using the Darkness Devil's Sight combo, there's no reason not to take this here, as being able to see normally in darkness, both magical and non-magical, is always going to be useful, especially in some late game encounters. People who have done Shadowheart's questline will know what I'm talking about. As well as we do get Legacy of Avernus, Branding Smite here as well. And of course, and I think I will actually replace a spell at this level. I think we won't be using Hex as much at this point, so I think it's a good idea to maybe swap this out for the aforementioned Darkness as a kind of better concentration option. Next up at Warlock level 6, we're going to get Dark One's Own Luck. Once per long rest, we can add a +1 d10 to an ability check. Not that influential, but when it matters, it matters. If you come up to one of those really difficult checks, it does not hurt to stack this on top of things like Guidance and the rest, so I would definitely recommend picking it up anyway, since we get it for free, whatever. Regardless. Now, as for your other spells here, it can kind of be whatever you like, it really doesn't matter. Misty Step, Mirror Image would both be really useful options. Crown of Madness and Cloud of Daggers are two nice concentration options as well. Armor of Agathis can give you a bit more tankiness if you want to maybe lean into the fact that Fiend kind of goes for both fire and cold damage. Yeah, this subclass gets like Cone of Cold and something where we normally wouldn't, so you can kind of play around with these as you like, but I'm going more for the fire theming, so I'm just going to pick up Counterspell as a nice utility option. Next up at Warlock level 7, we're going to grab another Eldritch Invocation, and the one I want to grab here is Book of Ancient Secrets. Book of Ancient Secrets is going to give us access to Silence, which, even though these can all only be used once per long rest, Silence can have some seriously, well, niche use cases, but when it shines, it really does. Rare Sickness exists, and Chromatic Orb will give us a Flaming Fire Orb attack. Again, this doesn't take our spell slots, so it's nice just to have an extra bit of damage that we can throw out when we need to, because yeah, Book of Ancient Secrets does not use our spell slots. As well as being able to pick up another spell, and one of the most crucial spells for this build is Fire Shield. Fire Shield allows you to cover your body in flames that shed light in a 3-meter radius. These flames can be either hot or cold, and depending on what you choose, it will give you resistance to that sort of damage type. And as well, anyone who attacks you will take damage. This will persist into the Slayer form, so we can actually have Fire Shield up while in Slayer, which can be really, really helpful. As well as Slayer being able to maintain concentration on spells, so things like Hold Person and Hold Monster, which we'll be getting later, will also work with the Slayer form as well. So, cast Hold Person on someone, and then just go ham with the Slayer's multi-attack. It's pretty cool. So yeah. Next up at Warlock level 8, we are going to get our next feat as well as another spell, and we're going to be picking up Wall of Fire because, again, we're a Pyromancer, it's what we want to work with. We create a blazing wall of fire, burning anyone who stands too close. Another concentration spell, but it can be an interesting spell to use when you block off a kind of escape route with flames, and then it's kind of a you're trapped in here with me type deal when you pop into your Slayer form. And now we do get to pick up another feat, and I will take this opportunity to go over the other feats that can be considered useful for this build. At this point I'm definitely recommending you take a +2 to your charisma, but there are a few things I want to point out. Elemental Adept Fire would absolutely be great for this build, allowing every single fire thing we do to ignore resistance to its damage, and whenever we cast spells of that type we cannot roll a 1. This would help you get past some seriously tough encounters in the late game, and I would probably recommend taking this at probably as your level 12 feat, if nothing else, but it's entirely optional if you'd rather put those points into dexterity or constitution, which I will do anyway. But if you feel like you're finding that the fire spells in this build are a little bit underwhelming, or the fire attacks are just because they keep getting resisted, then this is a good way to get around that. Another thing you could go for if you want to use a longsword or a greatsword like I am, but I will have other options for you, is obviously Great Weapon Master, which would fit nicely on this build as well. So it really is a pick your poison type of situation, but for now we're going to max out that charisma. Next up, at level 9 we are going to get another Eldritch Invocation, and I'm going to be picking up Minions of Chaos. Minions of Chaos will allow us to use one of our level 5 spell slots to conjure an elemental, meaning that we can now summon a fire elemental to fire alongside us, being able to take hits for us and draw aggro away, while being able to deal pretty significant damage in its own right. It's always nice to have another body on the field. It does suck that it costs a spell slot, but again, we have ways of mitigating that with this build. As well as now we get access to level 5 spells, and of course we're going to be taking Flame Strike. How could we not? Summoning a divine pillar of fire from the sky to roar down on your enemies, dealing fire and radiant damage, which is just awesome. The fact that this is one of like 2 subclasses that can get this, the other one being like Light Cleric, this is such a rare and special spell to grab, and of course I'm going to be picking it up. Next up, at Warlock level 10, we're actually going to get a feature that is kind of one of those things I've not really been able to show off before. Fiendish Resilience. Fiendish Resilience allows you to choose a damage type and become resistant to it, and you can pick a new damage type each short rest, but you can only have one type of resistance at a time. Now I thought this was just things like fire and ice and all those usual resistances to magic damage, but this actually counts towards slashing, bludgeoning and piercing damage as well. And any resistance you choose will carry over into the Slayer form. So, you can go with that. I think it works really, really nicely. Again, if you feel like you're in an encounter where certain damage types are going to be used often. In the case of my testing, I go up against Steel Watchers, so I slapped on that slashing resistance to be able to resist their main hand attack, and it definitely helped me tank through the battle quite nicely, so there you go. We do get to pick another cantrip at this point, and since I'm still kind of avoiding this, but we kind of do have a necrotic damage theme with this build towards the end, so Bone Chill works okay. It helps as being an alternate damage type. As well as we do get to pick another spell at this point, and as I said, we are going to be grabbing Hold Monster, allowing us to paralyze a creature, allowing us to always land critical hits, and then prevent it from moving. Perfect for us. Next up, at Warlock level 11, this is where we really kick things into overdrive. We get a 3rd Warlock spell slot, which is really, really good for us. We also pick up a Mystic Arcanum, and you can choose any of these spells. Again, they can only be cast once per long rest, but we can cast them without using a spell slot. Eye Bite is really strong for being able to control the battlefield if you want to focus on maybe like a fear type of deal. Flesh to Stone can just get rid of someone. Create Undead would create another body on the field, but I'm just going to be going for Circle of Death because, I don't know, I don't think I ever picked this spell for anything, so I thought it'd be quite nice to have as just a big damage spell. And we also do get access to another spell that we can kind of pick up from this list, and it's entirely up to you what you want to grab. I think at this point we've kind of gotten everything I want for this build, and since we've kind of started leaning into necrotic stuff, I might just pick up Blight. Again, it's nice to have an alternative damage type if you can't use fire. And finally, at Warlock level 12, we get access to a few things, namely a feat. Like I said, Elemental Adept and Great Weapon Master are absolutely still on the table, but I think an ability score improvement would also work just fine. This build is a little bit lacking in the AC department, so I definitely think bumping yourself up to an 18 could definitely help here, so I will go with that. Or if you feel like your HP or concentration saves are a bit lacking, then bumping up that Constitution can also work. Again, build this build how you see fit, or don't. I'm not a cop. Next up, we also do get another spell, and again, we can kind of choose whatever we like here. So, like a nice utility option could be Misty Step or Mirror Image. Again, just pick your favorites, it really doesn't matter. And finally, one of the things I've never actually shown off in a build video before is the level 12 Eldritch Invocation, Life Drinker, allowing you to deal additional necrotic damage equal to your charisma modifier with your melee attacks. But this is just going to take Pact of the Blade Warlock into overdrive for us, which is awesome. Nice little capstone for us. Whoa, that's a cinematic angle. You know what? Hold on. Oh, no, we kind of lost it. We kind of lost it. Hang on, I think I can get it back. Oh, you know what? That's cool. Let's go with that one. Anyways, that is the build, and overall what you're going to be getting out of this is, like I say, you're getting a pretty powerful Pyromancer. The ability to bind your packed weapon, like so, giving you a ton of damage, extra damage, and such like that. The ability to use various utility-based fire spells, as well as high damage options, so things like Fire Shield, Flame Strike, Fireball, Minions of Chaos to summon a Fire Elemental, Scorching Ray. You get all of the fun stuff, as well as great utility, like I said, Fiendish Resilience, the whole person and monster combo. And obviously the alternative damage options as well. You're getting a lot out of this build just from the stats alone. I know we only have 3 spell slots, but they're all level 5 and they all recover on a short rest. And with the equipment that we have, we'll have effectively 4, so that's quite nice. So let's get into the equipment. Now, something I neglected to mention at the start of this build is that this build is actually based on, or inspired by, Clive Rosfield from Final Fantasy XVI. He is the protagonist of that game, and he is a guy with fire powers who accidentally went on a murderous spree. I mean, sound familiar? And ended up getting kind of very angry at the world and all this sort of thing. And he also comes with a built-in transformation, so, you know, that's kind of where I decided to get all of this from. But yeah, so with this equipment, you're kind of going for just more firepower, literally. Things that give us fire-based abilities and kind of fire utility, but as you can see, I have a ton of different options for you to pick from for this build, so let's get into it. Starting off with our main weapon, this is my personal weapon of choice, would be Duke Ravengard's Longsword. Whenever we kill an enemy, allies within 9 meters gain temporary hit points equal to your charisma modifier. Unfortunately, because temporary HP doesn't stack with itself, this isn't going to work with our already existing Fiend Warlock feature, but it does kind of make us a nice team leader. We don't really care about that feature though. What we do care about is the fact that this will give us a +2 to our charisma, giving us a total of 22. If you decide to go with this longsword, you might decide you want to keep your charisma down at 18. And then, as such, be able to put Feats into Great Weapon Master, or, what was the other one? Elemental Adept instead. So feel free to work this build kind of however you like. Because, of course, you might not want to get this sword because of the fact that usually this requires you to kill Duke Ravengard and loot it from his corpse. However, there has recently been discovered another way to get this longsword or anything on Duke Ravengard's person without actually killing him. I don't know how well known this method is. The video I found that showcased it, which I will have linked in the description below for you if you want to do this, only has about 1,000 views, so I would suggest heading on over to that video, show the creators some love, because they actually went really in depth with their explanation and showing you exactly how to do it. It's method 2 of their 2 methods of getting the sword that they have shown you, and I think they really do deserve a bit of credit for showing that off, so I will have that linked in the description for you. But if you're playing as a Dark Urge who has these random bouts of violence, then maybe you're not too upset about killing him, but do know that you have to kill him kind of in the coronation or in your camp in order to get it, because it won't be available during the prison escape. And next up, of course, we have the Darkfire Shortbow. This is going to give us a persistent resistance to fire and cold damage at all times, so if you decide to not play as a Tiefling and go over human instead, you're still getting that kind of fire resistance, which is nice, and it just works as another ranged damage option for us, as well as giving us the ability to use haste once per long rest as well, which is another thing that can persist into our Slayer form, allowing us to get a hasted Slayer, which can be pretty dangerous. Overall, I think it works out quite nicely, and it made sense to have it on this build, even if it is a tad overused. But let's get into the alternative weapon options for this build. An Act 1 weapon that I would absolutely recommend is the Everburn Blade, giving you a natural plus 1d4 fire damage, and you can get this from the tutorial boss fight by casting Command Drop on him with Shadowheart. Everyone pretty much knows that already. But the cool thing about the Everburn Blade is that even though it's a base level weapon, it still packs a lot of punch and is really good for the early game, but you can combine it with the Drakethroat Glaive. Now, I've used the Drakethroat Glaive on our main weapon here to make it a +2 instead of a +1, but you can also cast the Drakethroat Glaive on the Everburn Blade, making it a +1 weapon, and you can add even more fire damage or mix it up with a different element. I personally think that it looks really cool with lightning and fire attached to it. Creates a very, very cool effect. But yeah, the Drakethroat Glaive is kind of mandatory for this build, just because, like it is on most builds nowadays anyway. And for some alternative final weapon options, we have a lot of things here. Baldur's Giant Slayer, while it isn't as optimal as it could be for a build like this, it can certainly work. On a hit, it doubles the damage from our strength modifier. Obviously, we're using our charisma, so that isn't as valuable, but if you decide to go with the Gauntlets of Hill Giant Strength or have some potions of Giant Strength lying around, then you can get a hell of a lot out of this, getting damage from your strength and charisma modifiers. But even if you don't do that, this is still a useful sword, gaining a +3 on attack and damage rolls from its legendary status, as well as Giant Form giving you more tankiness and a kind of an additional transformation as well, and that transformation will give you an additional 1d6 of damage on your attacks as well. So I think it's definitely worth it still, even if we're not really making use of that strength modifier. But if you decide to use those potions as well, this becomes the most powerful option that will just shred everything in the game. But because of the kind of technicality surrounding it, I've not made it the main focus of this build. That's still Ravengard's Longsword. And now for the Infernal Rapier. This is another option, a kind of fire sword that isn't as valuable on a build like this, as since we're already playing a Pact of the Blade Warlock, we're getting that kind of spellcasting ability modifier to our attack and damage anyway. But this does come in with a built-in Demon Summon, and it is a decent +2 weapon in its own right, which could synergize with the, since it does piercing damage, it can synergize with the Ballist Armor if you decide you want to go with that. If you decide you wanted to go with that option. So, thought I might point out the Infernal Rapier Ballist Armor combo there in case you want to use it. Another option is the Hellfire Great Axe, which comes in with a 1d6 of fire damage anyway, as well as the ability to give yourself heat whenever you attack. Heat is basically a kind of weird status effect that even though that will make you take fire damage each turn, but allows you to kind of spend like the kind of heat turns that you have to deal extra fire damage on a single attack. I personally don't like heat, but some people do, and if you know how to build around it, it can be a little bit useful, so I thought I would point that out, but mainly you'd be using the Hellfire Great Axe for the extra base damage that it has on it anyway. And finally, the Sword of Chaos that comes with a built-in extra bit of necrotic damage, as well as the ability to regain 1 to 6 hit points on hit. Just a bit of extra healing to keep you alive, if you wanted to stay with the Great Sword route. So yeah, those are the kind of the weapons that I would recommend for this build overall, and I think it is a pretty solid selection. So let's get into the rest of the equipment. First up is the Helldusk Helm, allowing you to see in magical or ordinary darkness and cannot be blinded. This doesn't really matter since we have Devil's Sight, so this isn't the biggest deal in the world. However, giving us a +2 bonus to saving throws against spells and prevent critical hits from ever being landed on us is pretty friggin' awesome, as well as giving us an extra fire ability in Immolating Gaze, allowing us to sear and frighten a target with nothing but our glower. Basically, and if the target is burning, we deal even more fire damage. So we can use that once per short rest. It's another fire attack to add to our arsenal that isn't going to take our spell slots. But of course, this is an Act 3 option, and I forgot to get it here, but something like the Helmet of Arcane Acuity, the Hat of Fire Acuity, or the Diadem of Arcane Synergy would be good choices. I would personally recommend the Helmet of Arcane Acuity for this build, and again, all that will be linked in the description. But another option, so let's say that you don't want to go for the ability score improvements, or Ethel's Boon, and you just want to get those feats. Well, the Birthright Hat is going to help with that. In conjunction with Duke Ravengard's Longsword, it's a total of your +4 to your Charisma, meaning that you could just leave Charisma at 16 and still get a 20 at the end of the day, or if you use Ethel's Boon like I have, you could get that 22 without an ability score improvement, and be able to get those extra feats. So again, build and mix match this however you like. As for our cloak, I have gone with the Cindermoth Cloak that just makes any creature that damages us receive burning. This can work with our Immolating Gaze feature as well, and burning just deals 1d4 fire damage every turn that it's up. If you don't care about that so much though, then replace it with the Cloak of Protection for a bit of AC. Well, we have 18 AC, which is decent. I would like more, if possible, so putting on the Cloak of Protection can absolutely get the job done for you. Mixing that with the Ring of Protection, which would be another alternative option here, for a total of 20. With haste up, that's 22, which is a bit more reasonable. But overall, it's not my first pick, because again, this is a roleplay build and I want fire bullshit, goddammit. So, next up is our armor choice, the Elegant Studded Leather, giving us a +2 bonus on initiative rolls, allowing us to act a bit earlier in turn order, giving us advantage on stealth checks if we need to be a little bit sneaky, as well as giving us the shield spell once per short rest, which is just another bit of utility that we absolutely love. We have a ton of attacks and stuff that regain on the short rest along with our Warlock features, so this all feels pretty in line with what we're trying to build here. But of course, if you want some early game options, as this is an Act 3 option, we have the Padded Armor +2, quite infamously one of my favourite looking armor sets in the game, that I think will just carry you along nicely. It's not as good, but it makes you take less damage for bludgeoning damage, and it's also just freaking awesome looking in my opinion. The closest thing we've got to a trench coat in this game. But of course you are going to want to upgrade this once you get to Act 3. As I said before, you can also go with the Ballist Armor if you decide to use something like the Infernal Rapier. The Ballist Armor will also make sense for a Dark Urge build if you kind of lean into that evil side, and it makes enemies within 2 meters vulnerable to piercing damage unless they are resistant and immune to it, and keeps that +2 to initiative roll bonus, basically making you a stabbing powerhouse. And finally, at the end of all things, when you have beaten the game's super boss, you gain access to the Hell Dusk armor. You are considered proficient with this armor while wearing it, meaning that we don't need to worry about our armor proficiencies. When you succeed a saving throw, the caster receives burning for 3 turns, we have resistance to fire damage and cannot be burned ourselves, and we take 3 less damage from all sources, and we gain the ability to use fly once per long rest. Coming packed in with a 21 AC, this is pretty much the best armor you can equip, but by the time you've got this, the game's pretty much over anyway, so I don't like recommending it, but I thought I would mention it here. Next up, our gloves is the Hell Dusk gloves, giving us a +1 bonus to spell attack rolls and spell save DC, which is great for our spellcasting, and it makes our weapon attacks deal an additional 1 to 6 fire damage, or 1d6, basically more fire, as well as giving us a +1 bonus to our strength saving throws, and the Raise of Fire cantrip, once per short rest, allowing us to cast basically a massive bolstered version of Scorching Ray, dealing 3 lots of 3d6 fire damage to targets that we can choose, either the same target or spread out across multiple. It's basically just boosted Scorching Ray, again, another big fire attack for us to use. But of course, late game option, early game option is the flawed Hell Dusk gloves, basically not coming with any of that extra bonus stuff and taking the damage die down to a d4 rather than a d6 of fire, but hey, as long as it works. And finally, the Hell Dusk boots. Again, we just want all the fire stuff we can get here. You cannot be forcibly moved by your foe's spell or actions, and you ignore the effects of difficult terrain. This also means you can't be knocked prone, which is quite nice. And when you fail a saving throw, you may use your reaction to succeed instead once per long rest, which is just... Jeez, that's pretty good. As well as the Hellcrawler ability, essentially giving us Misty Step once per short rest, but when we teleport, we impact with a Blast of Fire, dealing 2 to 16 fire damage. Again, more fire. More fire. We just get so much fire. But again, Act 3 option, early option is the Evasive Shoes, giving us a +1 to our armor class. Again, you can combine these with the other AC boosting stuff, yada yada yada, to get yourself to a nicer AC, if you want to do that rather than get all this cool fire stuff, which I like. I want the fire stuff. Next up, onto the amulets. We are starting off with my always-on Warlock option. We have the Spellcrux amulet, allowing us to, as a bonus action, once per long rest, regain an expended spell slot. So effectively, for a single fight, pretty much, we are going to gain an additional spell slot in theory. So having 4 Warlock spell slots is great, but of course if you use this already in your once per long rest, then I would recommend swapping over to the Necklace of Elemental Augmentation, allowing your Firebolt to deal additional damage equal to your spell casting modifier. Again, basically Agonizing Blast for elemental cantrips, in our case Firebolt, making that even more powerful. It doesn't show the damage calc here, but trust me, it's a bit better. Next up, your ring choice can be whatever you want. I've got the Killer's Sweetheart here, which I actually believe I meant to change to something else, if I remember correctly. Right, well, it can be the Killer's Sweetheart, or it could be the Ring of Protection, or After Death Do Us Part. It's entirely up to you, pick whatever you like, but Killer's Sweetheart would probably be my default choice, allowing us to, whenever we kill a creature, we basically get a reaction that we bank that we can use at any time to turn an attack roll into a critical hit once per long rest, basically just guaranteeing that we get a critical hit off. But again, if you've already used this feature, feel free to swap that ring to something else until your next long rest. And finally, the Ring of Arcane Synergy. Since we are going to be getting Firebolt and boosting up its power, we might as well turn that into power for our weapons. After casting Firebolt, we'll gain Arcane Synergy, meaning that our weapon attacks will deal additional damage equal to our spellcasting modifier. So, that means we're getting our boost from Pact of the Blade, Arcane Synergy, and Life Drinker, meaning that our melee attacks are going to do a serious amount of damage, which is awesome. I feel like it synergizes quite nicely with the rest of this build, allowing it to be effective at both range and in melee, which is what all spell swords love to be. And I don't believe there's anything else I failed to mention here. However, while I haven't included it as a mandatory thing on this build, if you want to kind of get a little bit more utility, again, because I feel like Warlock does feel rather limiting with that limited spell slot kind of thing, so if you feel like you want to get more utility, again, I've got a bunch of stuff from the equipment, but there is another place we can draw it from, the Illithid powers. So let's take a quick look at those. Boom, we just got all of them in a single click. Now, the only ones I would really recommend grabbing, as I don't want to go full Illithid with this build, so we're just going to pretend that these kind of other ones don't exist, but the ones I would recommend grabbing are, let me just find them real quick, this is something I should have done off screen. Right, Fool's Tunnel is a really good one, just allowing you to kind of charge through your enemies and push them away from you, feels very anime. Psionic Overload would kind of give you a sort of Slayer transformation, basically, like you can kind of treat it again if you're going with that Final Fantasy 16 inspiration. This is basically the kind of semi-prime thing that they do, which is basically Devil Trigger. This will give you kind of a halfway transformation, allowing you to deal extra psychic damage, with the caveat that you take psychic damage each turn. It works once per short rest, but I feel like just having that kind of transformation that gives you this menacing aura and extra damage just feels so fun. So I would definitely pick this one up. Mind Blast, yeah, we don't want that. Transfuse Health. Displace to be shaped, that requires you to go partial Illithid. Mind Sanctuary. Repulsor can also be another good one, and I'll have some extra ones linked in the description below, but things like Psychic Dominance, Psionic Backslash, Psychic Dominance we won't be able to get, but Psionic Backslash can work, Charm can work, Luck at the Far Realms is great. I would definitely recommend picking up a few of these. Again, I'll have all of the kind of Illithid powers that I recommend linked in the description below. I cannot believe I forgot to get these for the combat footage, it might have actually helped. But yeah, so I would definitely pick up some Illithid powers on this build, but again, that's entirely up to you. Do whatever you think is right. And I'll quickly show this off as well, Fiendish Resilience. All the damage resistances you can wish for, which is just lovely. The only thing I will quickly show off as well is the Slayer form, but I just realized I need to long rest as well because I have recorded this video, and I've just decided to record it. I'm like, yeah, I'll get it done tonight, and then it's like, you didn't do any of it right. So let me have a quick long rest, be back in a jiff. Alright, we are back, and I have had a long rest. It is now daytime, so it's time to introduce the Slayer. Man, this motherfucker's ugly. But anyways, the Slayer is going to come with a few unique things. Now, the Slayer is a bit strange. I explained this in the stream, but you kind of have to play it like you have rotations as an MMO character, as there's certain things you need to kind of use before you use your other stuff. So let's take a quick look at it. First up, you want to begin your turn with Let the Slaughter Begin. I just accidentally short rested. Whoops. How do I want to inspect the skill. How do I? Okay, there we go. So basically, you brand nearby creatures with a sinister mark so that their deaths make you harder to kill. Marked targets become dazed, which means they just get a massive debuff, and when they die, you gain a +1 to your armor class. Yeah, so basically, you want to inflict dazed on creatures at the start of your turn, because this skill will actually trigger extra attack. It is considered an attack that will trigger extra attack, because for those of you that don't know, Slayer gains improved extra attack, meaning that it can make up to 2 extra attacks in a turn, similar to Fighter, which is great. Also, another fun fact about the Slayer form is that any passives from your race carry over, so But so in keeping with our fire theme, Hellish Resistance from Tiefling, giving us fire resistance, carries over into the Slayer form, meaning that we can kind of pick up fire resistance as a Slayer, which just feels great for a build like this. Also, some other things carry over. I'm not sure how many of these things can actually be used, but they're there, so why not? But the Slayer also gains 25 strength and a massive hit pool hit point pool, which is nice. The only problem is the slightly lower constitution, which is still technically higher than what we have at base, but you have to just be careful with your concentration spells there as well. So yeah, you want to cast Let the Slaughter Begin to daze enemies, and then you can hit them with the multi-attack. Multi-attack deals 1d4 slashing damage a bunch of times, and then if the target is bleeding, you deal an additional 7 damage per hit, as well as if the target is dazed, the attack will always be a critical hit. So, go for Let the Slaughter Begin, or Scrumptious Bloodbath to make targets bleed, and then go for multi-attack after that to deal the most amount of damage. If you can, try and get both of these effects up, so maybe go for this one on your first turn, getting that bleeding effect, which will also heal you, by the way, and then go for Let the Slaughter Begin to daze your targets, and then go for the multi-attack to do massive amounts of damage, each one being a critical hit, as well as dealing extra damage as well. So you kind of have to buff yourself up, so you kind of have to go skill, 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 like an MMO character. There's also Slay, allowing you to rake your malevolent claws across the body of your target. If the target is bleeding, they are afflicted with a Contagioned Poison, which is a level 5 spell that you can just inflict with an already existing attack. If the target is prone, the attack will automatically be a critical hit, and if the target is bleeding and prone, the attack will be a critical hit, and the target will possibly become stricken with Flesh Rot, which just makes them vulnerable to all damage. Holy crap. So once you kind of know how to use the Slayer form, you'll be able to make it work. All of these are constitution saves, so if your enemy is good at those, you might have a bit of a hard time. But overall, if you know what to do and how to use these skills in which order, you'll have one hell of a time. We also have Relentless Lunge, allowing you to leap at your targets and possibly knock them prone, so that's how you get the prone for this. So you have to use your attacks in certain orders to get the most benefits out of them. Now, the other big weakness that Slayer has that I need to warn you about is the fact that its attacks do not overcome magical resistance to slashing, piercing, and bludgeoning damage, which means you're going to have a hard time if your enemy resists those, which sucks. However, the other thing that carries over into Slayer is Fiendish Resilience, which we get from Warlock, so you can actually make yourself resistant to damage while in this form as well, which I think is quite nice. I would basically just use this as an extra bit of HP, and again, maybe if you use Hold Person or Hold Monster and then go into this form, making all of your attacks with this form a critical hit regardless, you can really start to lay on the hurt. So find a way to use this to the best of your ability. So yeah, that is the build. Overall, I think this build has a lot of depth to it. Again, the main idea to kind of get the most out of this build is to roleplay a version of the Dark Urge who is a good person and does good things throughout the campaign, such as saving the Druid Grove, but then turns sinister when the butler gets involved, almost like a Jekyll and Hyde situation. And then when they turn into the Slayer, they just can't control themselves and go on a bloodlust killing spree. This is very similar to the very early portion of the game of Final Fantasy XVI, where this build takes some inspiration from, where the main character has this internal transformation that they cannot control. Once they transform, they go on a killing spree. So I kind of decided to take that inspiration and put it here, hence the overall character design as well. And I think the blend of the fire spells mixed in with the Slayer transformation in addition just makes this build extremely dynamic. Again, you're getting a ton of different fire spells, you're getting a ton of different ways to augment the Slayer form as well as your own abilities, and there's a lot of room to mix and match with this build, like taking certain equipment in order to take more feats like Great Weapon Master and Elemental Adept Fire to really push this build to the limit, or, use that equipment to bump up your dexterity or constitution instead. This is probably one of those builds where there is a lot of freedom to move your skills around and go from there, so feel free to play around with the different feats at different levels and find what works best for you. Again, kind of builds, all the kind of build info will be in the description as well, saying what works, what doesn't. I mean, hell, you can drop Spell Sniper as well if you want, if you really don't care about Firebolt, and replace that with something like Great Weapon Master Elemental Adept instead. It really is up to you. Play this build how you like, but I think the main idea that I want to get across here is that idea of, hey, try role-playing a Dark Urge build that cannot control the urge, and I think that will be quite fun. Again, do good, but then in those moments of weakness, claim your power. And I think this build can really be interesting to play, especially when you get into Act 3, when you get to the final encounter with Bull, and you get to choose, do you finally rid yourself of the Slayer once and for all, sacrificing that power, but gaining your own faculties instead, maybe multi-class, maybe getting rid of the Warlock levels altogether and making a new build, something like a Searing Smite Paladin or something like that. Or do you really feel like you cannot reject Bull and that it is hopeless, and so you accept becoming Bull's chosen, keeping the Slayer form, but maybe still strive to do good and actually use Bull's power to destroy all the evil in the world? Something along those lines. Really play this build how you want to. And you know what? I'm going to do this, since it worked in the last video, oddly enough, I'm going to do this again. If you made it this far into the video, feel free to comment. What should we do this time? Last time it was Golden Boy, which is a bit weird. This time comment flame on or something. Or you know what? Comment accept for truth. Final Fantasy 16 fans will know that one. Or comment both if you're really feeling spicy. I don't mind. Ooh, also, we kind of joked about this at the end of the live stream as well, because I don't usually do the YouTube stuff, but let's see if this actually works, because I want to see if the buttons will glow on one of my videos. So, I have to kind of prepare myself to do this, because this goes against every fibre of my being. Okay. 3, 3, 2, 2, 1, 1, here we go. Be sure to like, glow, 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 rainbow colours, and subscribe, glow, 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 rainbow colours. Did it work? Let me know if it worked. For the record, I'm never saying that again. I hated saying that. Anyways, I'm going to leave this video now because I've been rambling on long enough. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. And again, to those of you who came out to the stream, thank you very much.